Greetings from the tech, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of the Hearthstone Masters Tour in Seoul, South Korea. After 1 day and 7 rounds of Swiss, the field has been whittled down as we march closer to crowning a champion here in South Korea. My name is Frodan, joined by Mr. Derek Brown, portrait of a meme himself. And together we're going to be starting off day number 2 of Swiss with round 8. Derek, how is it going? You look really dapper today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As do you, but that rarely needs commentary.
Thank you. I'm wearing, I guess, a bat shirt. I don't know exactly what pattern is. You look closely, it looks like an assortment of random strokes and letters.
Well, it's kind of like a Rorschach test, and I saw a rabbit that had been cut in half, which probably means that I was traumatized as a child.
Yes, that's right. I'm learning a lot about you. What do you see? Well, we actually see a lot of mages in the field, but we also see some movement in the class standings. As yesterday, we got to witness Hunter and Priest put on quite a display as they march all the way through to what is top 16 of the standings. But before we go too much deeper into that, let's go ahead and break down what the Masters Tour is, who is playing, and what they are playing for, Derek. So why don't you go ahead and briefly talk about this event?
Well, Masters Tour is our kind of accompanying program to Grandmasters, where we have the league format of Grandmasters going on for 2 seasons this year. But then also we have 3 Masters Tour events in Las Vegas, which we've already had this year, Seoul here in South Korea, and then Bucharest later on in the year. More than 250 competitors have lined up here, qualifying via a series of online specialist qualifiers over the last couple of months, representing more than 50 countries and competing for that $500,000 prize pool, thanks to the Esports bundle as well that helped bolster the prize pool, thanks to everyone at home.
It's a lot of money, and it was thanks to the fans at home. That's right. Even you in the chat, thank you if any of you bought the Masters bundle. I definitely bought a few of them and gifted it to some of my friends as well as myself. And, so we have $500,000 on the line, $100K for first place, $50K for second place. And those initial matches of the top cutoff will be played today in day number 2, as well as rounds number 8 through 12 of Swiss, which we'll explain in just a moment. Tomorrow, we're going to be playing the dual tournament and then the top 4 single elimination, where we're going to have some best of 5 action to wrap it up and crown a champion here of Seoul, South Korea. And as you mentioned, the accompanying program with Grandmasters is what the Masters Tour is, but also the best performers from the Masters Tour and prize money will be promoted or receive a special invite to the Grandmasters League. More importantly, who is going to be relegated out in Season 2, which begins next week. So a lot of Hearthstone is incoming and abound. We're going to find out what's going to happen going into day number 2. Very quickly, let's once again go over again what Swiss is. So for people who are wondering, Derek, what is the Swiss system?
So it's using this new specialist format. They will be joining all the players, in which they'll play 12 rounds of Swiss, playing against players who have a similar record as possible against them to figure out who rises up to the top. When we get after our 12 rounds of Swiss, I think generally 9-3 is a record you have to be heading for to have a chance of qualifying through to that top 16 point. Any less than that and you're not going to make it. And the format that they're playing in that Swiss is Specialist, our format for this year for Season 1 of Grandmasters and these Masters Tour events as well. You're only allowed to bring 1 class, but you must bring 3 decks from that 1 class. They can have 5 cards different between them, and in between those 5 cards is where the real artistry, I think, of the format manages to shine. You have to tech for all possibilities that you could be up against, which at the end of the last meta seemed pretty pedestrian at that point to be able to do so. But here, right at the start of Saviors of Uldum, which is only a week or 2 old, it's a lot more difficult to predict correctly what the field's going to be.
That's right, and the field has shaped up a little bit as we have Zim, Deaddraw, and Staz, the undefeated players. Wow. It's a Mage, a Warrior, and a Hunter as a top 3, which is very similar to what we were describing. I believe at the very beginning of the show, Kibler and I were kind of breaking down the classes into different tiers. I think Hunter was at the very bottom of that tier 1. I wasn't sure. But seems like we've been validated. Casey, Yang Bangoon, Aprior, Sunni, Tars, Tianrei, Magoho, JS5, Topo Pablo, Empanizado, Adebak, Unid, and Hatul. So a mix of the Americas, the mix of Europe, and Asia Pacific all in there for our top 16. But this is not what it's going to look like, although we're probably going to see half these players into the final cutoff of Swiss.
Yes, I would definitely imagine so. A lot of the players with some lineups that are a little bit less conventional. In particular, I'm talking about Staz and Tobo Pablo with their Reno Hunters we got to see yesterday in an actual mirror, which was very exciting indeed. But even outside of that, there's a few priests knocking about. The new combo priest, which a lot of those players that are adept at that combo playstyle have been doing very, very well with.
Yes, and we've seen, Mage and Warrior be very popular and represented. However, Mage's performance is pretty middling, I'd say.
Yeah.
Part of it is because there's so much of Mage, therefore, a lot of times it's going to face itself, so its win rate's not going to be super high. But also, its matchups against other classes like Priest, even like Shaman, and some of the other decks, again like Paladin out there, just they have the counters ready for Mage because it's so expected, it's so popular. Therefore, people know that this is a class to beat, so they've prepared their primary and even the second or tertiary deck ready to kill it. What's your read on everything here? Because it feels like a lot of players are talking about Luna's Pocket Galaxy. They're talking about all these builds of Mage, and yet I look at their match history, and it's like they're playing the mirrors. So, largely the complaints seem to be against themselves.
Yeah, it does seem to be that. I think that it's kind of the circle of life in Hearthstone, right? Where if you're not playing the best deck in the format, you're playing something that's good against the best deck of the format to prey upon its overpopulation in the meta, which a lot of players have done very well. I think that's the main reason for the success of these Reno Hunters, these combo priests, and even the aggro rogues, a few of which have done fairly well, is because they're just so nice against that mage. They cannot remove enough of the stuff to be able to survive into the mid stages of the game before they can go for, as you said, Luna's Pocket Galaxy, reduce all the cost of their minions in their deck to 1, and then just absolutely pop off.
Well, it's very curious. If you look at the stats, we have 2,000 games coming up here soon after this round of Mage, and it was only totaling at a 50% win rate. And the only reason why it's able to get that 50% win rate is because they're beating the Warriors. Outside of beating Warriors and the occasional Druid, Mage is under 50% against every other class. Most notably Rogue, which is kind of been really difficult, and Priest. Priest has a 67% win rate against Mage so far this tournament. Priest is topping everything at 57, and Warlock at number 2 at 55.
Wow, I think that's a fairly small sample size, if I remember. Only a couple of Warlocks.
But I mean, that's what it's designed to do.
Yes, right, exactly, yeah. Sneak under the radar of most of the players. But as you could have seen there from the player cams, this first match that we have coming up is two 6-1 players, I believe. None of the 7-0 players represented here, fighting out for that top spot. Hatul up against Tars. Both of them playing the Reno Mage that we know so well at this point and having fairly good success with it. But Hatul, in a classic Hatul fashion, has got a little bit of signature twist on his list.
He's got some real dank stuff, including the ever-powerful, almighty Boulder Fist Ogre in his tertiary deck.
It's just a lot of stats.
Just because, I mean, it is a 1-mana 6/7 if you play Luna Pocket Galaxy.
You're
and
not
that's
wrong.
it.
Yeah.
So, very interesting stuff. And I know a lot of people are even concerned, like, oh, there's just a lot of mages even in the top 16. It's like, well, I mean, if more than half the field brings mage, it's just a very strong statistical likelihood that we do have some mage players getting through. My prediction is that mage is going to make up around a third of the field of the top cutoff after Swiss, which is lower than it should be, right? Because if it's making up half the field, then half of the cutoff should be mages at the very least, in terms of the expected performance of it. I do think that there's going to be a handful of priests and hunters that's going to be joining us, and then maybe a couple of warriors. Although I do feel like warriors playing the gatekeeper role, in that it beats a lot of the decks are trying to beat mage. And I think it's reflected in that because the Warrior has one of the lowest win rates in this tournament.
Yeah, and I think that's represented by Dead Draw being one of the very few players right up at the top with that Warrior.
Yeah.
I would be very interested to hear what his record has been so far in terms of what he's faced. Because if he's been up against the Priests in particular, as well as some of the aggro decks, obviously he's going to sail through his Control Warrior. It's just what it does. It kills everything.
Yeah. It's too bad because I feel like if the Shamans weren't running into, well, each other, which apparently has been happening, or against the Warriors, they'd actually be doing fairly well because they have the highest win rate along with Priest against the Mage with a 65%. And, you know, we're going to see if Hatul or Tars with some of their wacky deck lists and play styles are going to come onto display for this first series. So let's go into the first game here. Hatul starting off with Luna's Pocket Galaxy Enhanced. That's a great start. Logan's everything beside it.
that is for the most part what you're going to be looking for in this matchup. A little bit different to the Cyclone metas, Cyclone Mage meta, as you may have seen for the majority of Grandmasters Season 1, as well as at Las Vegas Masters Tour, where it was about getting the first giant down for the majority of the time, or trying to aggro your opponent out with some kind of a big Sorcerer's Apprentice play. In this matchup, it's a little bit slower to get going, so the value that is accrued through Luna's Pocket Galaxy becomes a lot more apparent over the course of the game.
All right, so a little bit of a passive start on both ends here to start off the game. It does come down to whether or not Tars can find a way to combat Pocket Galaxy. And even then, if both players do get the Pocket Galaxy, it does end up becoming about what the threat order you're able to place a lot of tempo on the board, or whether or not you're able to respond to your opponent's deck. And I think this might be a quick one here, Derek Brown.
It's certainly shaping up that way. You know, I say every time we see the Pocket Galaxy, Hatul does not have the absolute lockout hand quite yet because he doesn't have all too much draw. But I would say even just the Sandbinder on its own should be able to put him in a very good spot.
Yes. Tars basically passing. And, you know, I'm going to take a second to talk about this, where if you're playing Mage and you're playing Pocket Galaxy and you're going up against another Mage with Pocket Galaxy, you're kind of putting yourself at the mercy of like this entire situation. I mean, a lot of people are playing these Mage decks because they feel like, well, it's the best deck in the format. But at the same time, you're like purposely acknowledging that you're putting yourself in what seems to be a 50-50 situation. And this happens, and this is the risk and like the understanding that players have going into it.
And I think that's why a lot of players decided to deviate from Mage, because even if you deem it's the highest power level deck, it does not at all necessarily mean that it's the deck you should go for.
Right.
You can go for something that just slips through the cracks, if you will, and finds that early aggression to take down Mage.
Right.
Or you could go for a slightly different build of the Reno Mage. I saw Orange opting for a version with Elemental Evocation in his Reno Mage to try and go for a little bit more of an aggressive strategy. You can get a 5-mana Siamat or a 0-mana Zephyros, which I think is a little bit more the way to go if you're going to be playing a Reno Mage, because you've got to do something different, right? Or like you said, you're just leaving it up to the chance of the draw.
Yeah, and this is going to happen. Some players have chosen to deviate from it, and I personally believe in not just following what everyone else says, but of course, it's a lot easier said than done. People don't have a lot of time to test, and therefore, when you're playing a tournament very close to a release of expansion, people are going to try to go with what's more guaranteed, as opposed to things that are more fleshed out. And that's kind of like the delicate balance. People always say, oh, you should just have like a tournament, or you should have like a lot of cool games being played right after the expansion, so all the new cards are out, people are excited. Yep. However, people tend to gravitate towards what they can immediately understand. I have actually no doubt that over time, throughout this metagame, we're going to see other classes eventually slowly pick away at the Mage and Warrior combination there, and perhaps even dethrone them.
I agree. I'm still of the opinion that I hope we see a Luna's Pocket Galaxy nerf at some point in the future. I think it's a little bit overtuned as it currently stands, because in the previous meta, at least, in the previous meta, even though it was fairly dominant with the Mana Cyclone Mages, I thought that the Mirror was an incredibly interesting matchup. It was very volatile. It was over very quickly a lot of the time. But I was finding that the better players, you know, Hunter Ace, Alu Timu, I'm not sure who was playing it particularly well in the Americas. I didn't catch a lot of the broadcasts.
Well, if you find out, can you let me know?
Whoever was playing it better in the Mana Cyclone Mirrors, I generally found out was coming on top.
Yeah, in Americas, it seemed to be a lot more warrior-driven for a while, and then a lot of players started getting onto the Mage train. I think, you know, like Muzzy and Saiyan and like all of them were kind of going into it. But one player that always intrigued me was Frozen, because Frozen wasn't really playing Mage, and he was beating a lot of people. He was playing like Token Druid.
Yeah.
And winning. So it was very interesting. Tortolan Pilgrim is finding that Luna's Pocket Galaxy and casting it. Is it too late, though, Derek? Has the damage been done?
Yeah, it feels that way. I think Tars got a little bit fortunate in that it was a pretty low amount of attack generated for Hatul.
Yep.
That Bloodlust should fairly easily ramp it up to a lethal. Everything that he needs to close this one out. Bit of a dud for Tars, but it just bees that way sometimes.
A lot of the times, when you're hard mulliganing for things like Pocket Galaxy in this matchup, that's why a lot of players have kind of, you know, very upsettedly talked about their tournament performance, which is directly tied to how often they are drawing Pocket Galaxy or going up against their opponent that draws Pocket Galaxy. And that's why, Derek Brown, that's why I play decks where I want my opponents to play the Pocket Galaxy on 5, because I am hook scimitaaring their face, or I'm just playing, you know, Arcanite Reaper and going face. I just want to do things that get them.
You were in the break room. You were going like full Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction, like play Pocket Galaxy. I dare you. I double dare you.
I want
them to. You were begging
to.
them to play it.
Yes,
because they just
I would
died.
love to kill them.
It was actually just becoming the meme of 5 mana do nothing.
Yeah, a lot of times you were witnessing that.
I was. You were destroying them.
The games that I were losing is when they decided to play stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's not
That's
good.
cheating.
Yeah.
They're playing cards. It's Mage.
My opponent is playing cards.
My
Baby
one
rage.
weakness.
Yes. The counter to my deck is having a deck.
It's literally anything.
Apparently, yes. All right, so, you know, that's the first game here. I do want to say that Mage Mirrors are by far, in all capitalized letters, the most popular matchup in this tournament so far. 800 games of it.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a lot of Mage Mirror.
This might shock you, but Mage has won 50% of the time.
Checks out.
Yeah.
Looking at the alternative deck list that both the players have, it looks like they've both got an anti-warrior and an anti-aggressive strategy. I don't imagine either player will be switching over as they lose in the anti-warrior strategy. A lot of the kind of the stall and the removal, which can be pretty important if your opponent pulls ahead. And in the anti-aggro version, they lose a lot of the oomph in the deck to actually kill their opponent. A lot of the meat.
Ooh, yes. Please keep describing Hearthstone using food. Be lovely.
Well, neither player has found the source so far of Luna's Pocket Galaxy.
Wait.
Did Hatul just...
Okay. Yes, the arrow faked us out.
Because I was going to say, that is exactly the kind of thing that Hatul would do. Just stare his opponent in the eyes and set fire to himself.
Assert dominance.
Yeah, exactly. If I'll do this to me, just think what I'll do to you.
Yeah, like, well, you know, this worked out real great for Osaka back in the 2015 World Championship. For people who don't know, it was, for many years, and still is to this day, largely considered to be, by fans, one of the coolest moments in Hearthstone competitive history, where instead of hero powering down Tice in the Freeze Mage Mirror, he chose as a mage to hero power himself, so that way, you know, Fireball wouldn't kill or pop the ice block at 1. It'd be popping at 6. It was a very cool play at the time. But what's really funny about that is if you go back and ask Osaka and Tice, they're like, yeah, actually, we both played pretty badly that game, but we found like a cool play, so like everyone thought it was like a really great game. And the player's like, yeah, just don't tell anyone about that. Your secret is safe with me. Until now. So this exact moment was something that Hatul actually called out on social media. Oh, no!
I beg your pardon.
So Hatul yesterday was tweeting like, oh, well, Kibler and Frodan didn't talk about how I was really afraid off of Counterspell off the Arcane Keysmith.
I did see him throwing shade at you.
I think he was just clarifying. He wasn't saying like, wow, these guys are suck. He was just saying like, this is something that they didn't mention.
Sorry, I'll clarify. I saw him viciously bullying you on social media.
Stop cyberbullying me, Hatul.
That is a huge moment. This definitely shapes the course of this matchup drastically.
Yeah, and you know, he kind of snap called that a little bit quickly relative to, well, what he tweeted at me, Ryan Kibler. And it was something that he said that he was worried about, and then it ends up becoming the bane of his existence this game.
I mean, it's a close call, right? Because the benefit of it going off and it not being a counterspell is he wins the game. I think the vast majority of the time, if Taz is not playing Pocket Galaxy on 5, he probably doesn't have it. And so then Hatul knows he's at a very distinct advantage. The downside of it being counterspelled is quite large, but he still has a pretty meaty hand. Like, Hatul's curve, as it currently stands, I'd say is better than an average draw from an opposing Reno mage.
Yeah. Well, the Reno has cleaned up a lot, and he still has tempo through Tiamat. So, you know, in terms of the fair portion of this game, when we talk about fair, it's more like instead of fighting at discounted cost, you fight at full retail. He's still ahead.
It seems such a novel concept in this day and age of Hearthstone of paying the mana cost for your cards.
I mean, literally, 5 mana do nothing.
Yeah.
But, you know, Tars still has to fight back on the board. He does have ways to deal with it right now through the form of his AoE over the course of a couple turns. Or, I mean, he's looking at Tortorlan Primalist and thinking, is there any way that I can play that instead of Flame Strike here?
Yeah, I think when he plays that, he really wants to go for Pocket Galaxy primarily, or Power of Creation, I guess, if he finds that. But it was kind of a close call, because taking too much damage early on, I think, is how he definitely would lose this game. Because if he's met with Fireballs to the face, Antonidas Freeze, something like that, that's when I think this goes very wrong. So I can respect Tars for protecting his health total there.
Hatul plays the Sandbinder and gets the Mountain Chain. Although, I mean, there's only one other card he could have drawn, which is Zephrys. Yeah, Zephrys being an elemental is a really important part of the Reno decks that can use Sandbinder to specifically tutor it out. And when you have things like draw an element from your deck and you're guaranteed to get one of the cards you're building your entire deck around, it turns out to be very good and consistent.
One of the reasons why I like Elemental Evocation in this deck as well, while it's obviously a little bit less consistent when you're not playing Cyclone, just being able to tutor it out specifically, then reduce its cost, like 4 mana to draw a Zephrys and play it, can be pretty nuts.
Yeah, it does seem really strong. So Tars has Tortorlan Pilgrimist. Wow. Tortorlan, God, I can't say
Prigmalist, I believe you're looking for.
Tortorlan Pragmatist. It just slowly descends into a series of philosophical and worldview debates. Tortorlan Pilgrimist. And I still think that he's trying to find a way to squeeze it in, but doesn't really have too many good ways to answer the Mountain Giant outside of this Voodoo Doll. I wonder if he wants to drop this Conjurer's Calling.
Yeah, I think he was just wondering, is it worth going for this for 2-3 drops, which is kind of low value, because, you know, it's a world apart from Cyclone Mage, where you could be relatively liberal in this matchup, or against mages with your Conjurer's Calling, because 1 or 2 big boards would generally get you there.
Yes.
With only 1 Conjurer's in the deck, you have to be a lot more conservative, a lot more pragmatic, if you will, with your use of it.
Yes. And Hatul has Alex Straza and Power of Creation as some of his best tools for developing onto the board.
That's the juice.
It is the juice.
I bring life.
Tars takes 10 damage. Now he has the Tortorlan Stoicist in his hand, but not necessarily able to play anything right now. What does the Witchwood Piper draw here? I believe Tars already has played his Zephrys, which has gotten the Wild Growth.
So Doomsayer is the only other 2-drop in the deck.
Assuming he's playing that same primary list, which I think he is.
Yes, I think so, yeah.
I wonder.
Which doesn't seem particularly effective to me, but he's not really at the point where he can just freeze and go face. Even with another Conjurer's thrown down.
Yeah, and I wonder if, in his mind, he feels too threatened by the Alex Straza just to play taunt minions.
Yeah.
Okay, Ziliax is a way to kill Alex Straza this turn.
He's taking it nice and slow. I've got to be honest, I was kind of tempted by Tortorlan Nihilist there, just to try and search for the Luna's Pocket Galaxy, or just some kind of big meaty play, but I guess it's that health total he's afraid of.
Caligos. I mean, there's a lot of powerful spells, including Power of Creation.
None of those are particularly tempting.
Flame Strike just seems to be a nice, easy way to deal with it.
Yeah, I quite like the look of that. I was looking at Snap Freeze at first glance because I've kind of been conditioned into thinking that's the one in Mage Mirrors.
Right.
But again, with fewer big minions, like Mountain Giant in the Reno Mage, it makes sense to just go for the extra Damahe.
Yeah. Well, Tars picks up Stargazer Luna, so a couple of nice utility cards here and there, but nothing super impactful. Is it time? Is it time that we dropped the Tortorlan Atheist?
It's getting closer. He's because, you know, with only so much removal in the deck, Hatul's probably not going to run out of at least a reasonable
Oh.
threat for a while.
Here we go. Oh, yeah, the polymorph.
Just roll the dice. Hey!
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, that summarizes about the state of this game here for Tars. I believe that's game over.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just get got, sadly.
Yeah, or sometimes you frostbolt yourself in the face. Ecop, are you watching?
That's in the Venn diagram of getting got. That's in the middle, with frostbolt in your face. They overlap.
About 3 or 4 years ago, we had this Hearthstone tournament where a German player, Ecop, who has since moved on from Hearthstone, frostbolted his own face when he had like a lethal opportunity with Freeze Mage, and on camera he like acted as if that was an accident. But it's also something to know about Ecop is that he really loves BMing when he has the opportunity to.
Yeah.
I personally think he did it on purpose and then like realized he'd messed up halfway through and then was like, wait, what? Because the delay of reaction was a little bit suspicious, if you ask me.
That sounds like pretty peak Ecop.
Yeah.
Ecop.
Yeah, it's a trip down memory lane for people who didn't watch Hearthstone back then, or did watch it and haven't thought about it for a long time. But those were definitely the good old days when people BM'd and, of course, messed up on broadcast, which is really funny. Either way, that's the first series here of round number 8. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to have more bonus coverage about what's happening around the tavern. Make sure to check out battlefy.com/HSEsports to keep up to date on what's happening, because Mage is struggling, and we'll see if the Priest, the Hunters, and maybe even some of the other classes will rise up in their place.